My postcard today is from the little Middlesex town of Sunbury that nestles by the side of the Thames in an ancient river valley. To celebrate their civic pride and their sense of history, the people of Sunbury have created an enormous embroidery that depicts the parish in 3 panels, nearly 26 feet long. Colin, what was there here before there was ever a Sunbury?
Well, it really is the river that's behind me. I mean, the river has been here for thousands and thousands of years. It varied. There were the great ice ages which covered so much of northern Europe, and then this would have been a rushing torrent of water, perhaps miles wide. And then it would reduce as the actual ice caps froze again, then another thaw, then a raging torrent of water coming through here. And this went on perhaps for about 500,000 years, and the last ice age was only finished some perhaps 10 to 15,000 years ago. So the river is the real secret, and of course it was the great floods of water that brought down all the gravel deposits which so often today are mined in this area.
So what's the first evidence of Sunbury itself, its name and the place that we now know?
Well, we move on quite a bit for that actually. After the Bronze Age and then the Iron Age, the Romans came to this area. 400 years they occupied both quite a large station in Staines, and this meant we would have seen some Roman occupation, but no doubt the villagers, very small villages here, would have carried on much as they had done for all their lives and their parents' lives. Things wouldn't changed a lot. It really probably significantly changed and became Sunbury in the Saxon days. And we believe that a Saxon chieftain called Sunna, S-U-N-N-A, he built a small fort here, probably as a protection against invading Danes and the Vikings that were using this river as a sort of royal route, a major route to invade this country. And that would have been in the 7th century, something like that, AD. And they think that Sunbury is a derivation of Sunna's Burh, or Sunna's fortified place. There would have been quite a few people living at that time, perhaps 40 or 50 people. And the next major event probably for Sunbury was King Edgar in 962 granting a charter to one of his kinsmen for loyal service, and he actually granted a charter for Sunbury. And the routes, the directions, the boundaries of this Saxon charter very roughly equate with the Sunbury that we know today.
The church itself, the one we see today, St Mary's, what would have been then before that? Are there any Saxon or Norman parts of the current church?
Now, unfortunately, no, the present church was built as late as 1750, where they'd pulled down the medieval church because they said it leaked, it was cold, it was drafty. So it was completely demolished and the new church built quite quickly.
In 1750, the Bishop of London gave permission for a new church to be built here in Sunbury. And in 1752, that's indeed what happened. On November the 26th, a new church opened for business. In 1856, Samuel Toulon was commissioned to create a more beautiful and enlarged church, and this he did by the use of these exquisite mosaics resembling the Alhambra Palace in Granada, because it was achieved by building something in the Byzantine style, exotic and Eastern. But why did Sunbury need a new church? Well, it's quite simple. There was a new elite here in Sunbury, so a bigger and better church was required to reflect the new status of the village and the growing population. And that is why a new St Mary's was born from the ashes of the old one. Sunbury in Tudor times, the next great age in this small village. What was it like here?
Well, I think the Tudors were perhaps the foundation in Tudor times of the Sunbury that we really know today, because once Cardinal Wolsey had built his royal very large palace anyway at Hampton Court, later the royal palace of Henry VIII, then that obviously affected people here. The wealthy, of course, wanted to live near the court. Sunbury was ideally placed next to Hampton Court. So I think that would have seen quite a surge of building activities. And we know that Elizabeth I gave the royal manor of Sunbury to a Nicholas Yeatsworth, who was the master of the French tongue, in about 1580. So we can see here again direct royal influence in the affairs of Sunbury.
Let's talk also about Chertsey Abbey, so very powerful on the Surrey side of the river. Were there any main events that Sunbury would have partaken of happening in the Abbey?
Well, I think that, yes, we would have undoubtedly been affected by Chertsey Abbey. It was such a powerful and wealthy abbey at one time. I believe the 8th or 9th most wealthy abbey in the whole of the country. One incident was the death of Henry VI in 1470, when his body was brought down from London, where it's reputed he'd been murdered, to Chertsey Abbey to be buried, and guarded by French troops from Calais. The idea, in fact, was that it would be done secretly so that his remains could be brought out quietly from London. But this didn't happen, of course. News always gets around, and I think being guarded by French troops who couldn't speak any English but were very quick to try and line their pockets with silver meant that they were showing the villagers as they came along the river bank the body of the king, the dead body, letting them try on his cap, which immediately cured people's headaches, letting them try on his slippers, which improved their rheumatism, or if they had lame, they suddenly could walk again. At least so the monks at Chertsey Abbey said. And this really, for a while, made Chertsey Abbey quite a centre of pilgrimage. And these tokens have been found along the riverbanks here in Sunbury. So I'm sure that had an effect on Sunbury.
Let's move now from the Tudor period. When is the next great Sunbury era?
Well, obviously there are interesting times during the civil wars of Charles I and the Restoration, but I think the next really big event for Sunbury was the Huguenots coming to Sunbury after Louis XIV. He cancelled the Edict of Nantes, which allowed Protestants and Catholics to live in peace together. And he sort of put great pressure on Protestants in France, and this meant a lot of them emigrated, literally. Perhaps 100 or more thousand French people left France. The Protestants, a lot went to the Low Countries, to Holland, a lot came to England. And what is surprising is that quite a large community came to Sunbury. And we still have French Street today as a reminder of that. But I think they caused quite an influence in Sunbury. They very quickly bought the lordship of the manor. And we know from records, existing records, and with the Huguenot Society, that they played a part in the court life in England at that time.
Why did they choose Sunbury?
Well, this again I think is interesting, but probably these were the better class French Huguenots. These were not the artisans that came to Sunbury. These were not the weavers and the painters. These were the slightly more aristocratic French. Hampton Court, you see, the palace of William and Mary then, had been rebuilt by Sir Christopher Wren. It was the centre of English court life.
Is there still any evidence of their architectural buildings here?
We think one or two of the buildings still surviving, perhaps like the William and Mary House or Orchard House, could well have been built by, or certainly lived in by these Huguenot families.